Hello, this is Craig with Carshalton Advisory, and today we're going to go through Chapter 5 of Collie and Singh's Power Pivot and Power BI User's Guide. That is on calculated columns. So there's two ways to get started here today. You can either download and use the sample files from the textbook. Now the secret to this is don't open up the Chapter 5 files because all the work's already done in that. What you should do is open up the Chapter 4 files and then start working from there. Your other option, and the better one, is if you work through our Chapter 4 sample file, continue to use that one. Save it as a new name, so you can always go back to that previous one if you wanted to. But that way, all of the other live links are going to work for you, which wouldn't happen if you're using the downloaded files. Anyways, let's get started. So what we're going to do is click on Manage the Data Model, and we can either do that through the Power Pivot tab or in Excel 2016 through the Data tab with this green icon here. So that opens up our Power Pivot window, and you will see the tables that you have linked to it. What we're going to do is we're going to start on our sales tab or with the sales table. So this will be our first experience with DAX, which is the formula language used in Power Pivot. Now you're going to notice there's a lot of similarities with the formulas that you've been using in Excel, but there's two places that you can use DAX. One is with a calculated column, which is what we're going to do today, and the second is when you calculate or when you do calculated measures, which is something we're going to do in the next chapter when we go through that. So let's start today by adding a calculated column. So what we're going to do is add a column that's going to calculate our margin amount. So what we need to do is select any cell that's under this add column heading. Once we do that, just like in regular Excel, you type your equal sign, and the difference is instead of having the formula right in the cell, it's only going to show up in the formula bar for you up here. So we're going to type in equals, and then what we can do, there's two ways we can reference a column. The first way is just by clicking in one of the cells in the column you want. So what we're going to do is start by clicking in any cell in the add column range. Just like in Excel, we're going to start by typing an equal sign. Now you notice what's different in Excel, you can click here and you can actually type the formula right into the cell itself. In the Power Pivot, we're going to have to only be able to type right into the formula bar here, so we don't have that same option. So the first way we can bring some data into this formula is by clicking in the table column that we're interested in. So in order to calculate the margin, we're going to click in the sales amount, and you'll see right at the top here, it has brought in the data from that column for me. Next, we're going to subtract the product's cost, and we'll demonstrate the second way of referencing a column, and that is by using autocomplete. So I have the minus sign, I'm going to use a square bracket, and when I've done that, it's given a whole list of all of the column names. So we're going to use the product cost one, so I've typed a T, and then in order to integrate this into the formula bar, I don't have to type this whole thing out. All I need to do is hit the tab key, and now you can see that that has been integrated into our formula here. So let's hit enter. And after just a second here, you'll see that this column is now, in fact, I'll scroll all the way down to the bottom, 60,000 rows later, and that column has filled all the way down. One other thing you'll notice is that it's a slightly darker color than what our usual column color is, just to designate that it is a calculated column rather than strictly a linked one. So next what we're going to do is rename the column because we don't want to have it stay here as calculated column 1. That doesn't help us a whole lot. So there's two ways we can rename it. One is to right click in here, drag down to rename column. So it has a contextual menu like you might have used in Excel tables previously. The other thing we can do, of course, is just double click and type in the name that we want. So we're going to rename this one margin because that's what we've calculated. All right, so that's done now. So now what we can do is we can treat the margin column just like any other one, in that we can reference it in future calculations. So we can have calculations that look back into other calculated columns. So let's reference this new column in a calculation. So again, we can click in any cell, and what we'll do here is we'll calculate the margin percentage. So in order to do that, I'm just going to use my keyboard to enter these in. I'm going to hit equals. I'm going to use my square bracket. We'll use margin. I've tabbed now to bring that into the formula bar. And then we are going to divide the margin, which is the column that we just calculated, by the sales amount value. So I'll type in a bracket, SA, there's my sales amount. I'll hit tab, enter, and we're done here. Perfect. So now let's rename this column, and we're going to call this one margin underscore PCT for percent. Perfect. So as you've noticed, there's a lot of similarities between what you've used for tables in Excel and what you can do in Power Pivot here. There are a couple differences, though, that are important to know. For one, in a Power Pivot table, in each column, all of the cells are going to share the same formula. So you can't have formulas up here be one thing and formulas in another row be different. Everything in the column is going to have the same formula. Second, there's no kind of typical A1 style referencing. So if I can't type in equals A1, and which in Excel would highlight the top left cell for me. In this case, these types of referencing doesn't work within the Power Pivot tables. Now, these tables are stored statically, and so what happens is the computations get triggered when either a new formula is defined or edited, when the table itself is refreshed, or if any of the upstream columns are refreshed. So for example, if I was to change this margin column and change the formula, it would force a recalculation of the margin percentage one. So let's do a few more examples that'll line up with what they've done in the book. And so they just want to demonstrate that a lot of the same functions that you use in Excel are available while you're in the Power Pivot window here. So for example, you can use a sum function. Okay, so we're going to sum what's called the product cost. Oh, I'm going to use a square bracket here. And so there is our product cost column. Now what you'll notice when I enter this with a close bracket here, close parenthesis, what I get in that column is a sum of all of the total product costs. So it's not summing left to right or east to west across my spreadsheet. It is giving me the total product cost all summed up. We'll rename this. All right. As well, you can use some of the date functions that you've used in Excel. So they've pointed out using the month formula, for example. I'll scroll to the right so we can see this. So for example, we could use our month function. So MON to get to month, I can tab it to create that. I'm going to use an square bracket, and we will base that on the order date. I'll need to do a close parenthesis to make this work, and this is going to bring back the month number for us into this column. All right, so we can go down to the bottom of the column here. And so sure enough, yeah, we have a different month number at the bottom here, which is going to correspond to the month from the order date column. We can also use the year function. Now you've noticed I don't have to go back up to the top to do my formula, because anywhere I type it in this column, it's still going to fill up the whole column for us. So we'll use that same order date column to do it. Hit enter. And it's shown us now, these are 2004 orders. We can go up to the top and there's 2003. So typically the formulas that have the same name in Power Pivot and DAX are going to behave with the same syntax as what you would have used in Excel. Thanks for joining me today. I'll try and get the video up for Chapter 6, where we start going into measures, which are the really fun thing with Power Pivot compared to Excel. Make sure you save your file under a new name, and then we'll be able to continue using it in the next lesson. This is Craig with Carshulton Advisory. Thanks for watching.